the next logical step for us is the only way that we can solve the problems of healthcare system, whether it is in India or globally. Okay, the India problem may be I need to expand access to a much larger population at a much lower cost and being able to deliver it places where patients exist. The solution to all of these, to a certain extent, is being able to ensure that we have innovative hardware which is hardy, which is capable, but it is married with software which has the AI algorithms which ensures that the mundane tasks get done, the quality is high, and at the same time the throughput can be expanded. And I see that there is no other place which is more perfect than India and then the Wipro facility that we are here, which is able to do both of these.
Hi, wherever you're watching this, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to Tech Conversations, where we bring you insights from tech entrepreneurs, CXOs, and investors. I'm Hari Arakli, and in this episode, Chaitanya Sarawate, President and CEO for India and South Asia at GE Healthcare Technologies, talks about why he thinks India can leapfrog healthcare delivery. Chaitanya, who's also the Managing Director of the Wipro GE Healthcare joint venture based in Bengaluru, talks about opportunities in India a year after GE Healthcare became an independent company listed on the NASDAQ, with the idea of becoming a more integrated medical technologies company and not just a provider of imaging equipment for medical diagnostics. So Chaitanya, good morning, and thank you so much for making time for this conversation at the beginning of your day, in the middle of your work day. So really appreciate your time. And just to get us going, can you please tell us a bit about yourself? How did you come to be in GE Healthcare? And we'll go from there.
Okay, wonderful. First of all, appreciate you making time and willing to spend time in the first week of January. We are still just getting back from holidays, as you can imagine. So first, maybe let me go a little bit backwards about Wipro GE Healthcare and then myself as well. So Wipro GE Healthcare is the joint venture entity that is operating here in India. It is both the global GE Healthcare medtech giant, and obviously everybody in India is familiar with the Wipro story of the build out that has happened. We are the largest medtech company here in India, and essentially we function, as you would have seen in this fantastic campus, we function with three verticals. So we obviously distribute and service medical technology here in India. We design and develop new products and technologies here in the tech center, and have been for so many years. And then of course we have manufacturing plants here as well. So that's Wipro GE, and I'm quite happy to lead the Wipro GE organization. I'm not a new person to GE Healthcare. I've been with GE Healthcare for almost 14 years now, across various different geographies and various different roles. And prior to that, for quite a bit of duration, I used to live in the United States, working for different sections of healthcare industry, whether it was health insurance, whether it is pharma companies, etc. So I think the journey has been interesting, but being part of a local healthcare devices medical technology company was something that attracted me to GE Healthcare. Wanted to work in India because I believe that in India we will have the best opportunities going forward, given the large population, the substantial amount of need, the kind of talent that we have available here, kind of technology development that can happen here. And so that's how I came here, and last 14 years have been a fun ride.
Okay, very nice. I was going to ask you to give us a sense of the size and scope of the business that you are responsible for, that you oversee. For a more sort of general audience, can you give us a brief overview of that?
Sure. So I think, as I mentioned, three different components, right? So we have a pretty significant presence for almost 32 years here in India as a distribution and service entity, where we sell medical devices, as complex as MRI or PET CTs or cyclotrons, all the way to regular use devices like baby warmers, etc. So wide range of product portfolio. We've been selling for almost 33 years, and we have the largest install base across India. Largest in terms of the number of hospitals, the number of patients that use it, etc. So that's on the distribution side. I think the engineering side, globally, GE Healthcare, and this is well known, spends about $1 billion in engineering development, new product development, research, etc. And I would say that we are a very substantial portion in terms of contribution of the research and development that happens across India here, which happens in India. And then from a manufacturing standpoint, obviously, we are one of the largest medical device manufacturing exporters based in India. And we have been in India both as Wipro GE as well as GE Bell for almost 30 years. And I think based upon the statistics that I have seen, again, we don't track it, but I think based upon what Department of Commerce, etc., have indicated, we contribute almost to 10 to 12% of the aggregate exports that happen in India in the medical device field. And so we are a pretty substantial exporter as well that we have.
Okay. So again, from a question from a general audience's perspective, the significance of GE Healthcare becoming a standalone company. And it's a year. In fact, I think this month, last year,
today is exactly 1 year.
Okay. So very nice. Can you basically kind of walk us through the significance of that? And then if there are sort of any India implications as well, can talk to us about that.
Yeah, sure. I think GE historically for long periods of time was a conglomerate with lots of different verticals. We had an energy business, aerospace business, healthcare business, plastics, many businesses. And over a period of time, I think the accepted practice amongst the investor community, amongst the stakeholders, was that it is better when you are a standalone, focused company, which is able to essentially marshal all the resources and direct them towards the toughest problem in healthcare and make sure that we are able to solve. Because healthcare is a large industry and it is provides a substantial opportunity globally. And not having to deal with the vagaries that impact different industries at different time, and being able to remain focused on a single industry and being able to remain focused on making sure that we are meeting the needs of patients, of our provider customers, of the world essentially, unencumbered by what is happening in other industries. I think that's a advantage of becoming a standalone entity. And so I think this is a pretty significant event because it is the largest medical device spin-off in history. So essentially, we became an independent company, which is like a child being born, but a child being born which is already 30 years old and which has a pretty large, well-developed product base, customer base, and etc. So I think that is how we see it, and substantially positive for us, employees, but for our customers as well as for patients in general. Now, the specific implication for both patients in general, customers in general, but also for India is as follows, right? So when you look at it from a patient's or from a customer standpoint, what they want is they want companies like us to continually invest in new technology, to bring new products out, to be at the cutting edge of new product development. And I think we now have had the adequate wherewithal to be able to do it on a consistent basis. And we are already seeing results, new products that are coming out because of that spin-off, right? Whether it is a small pocket-sized handheld device, right, which can go into the field along with a provider, right, to be able to ensure that we are able to detect abnormalities at the patient's home, right? It is essentially a transformation of a stethoscope into a stethoscope plus a listening device, plus a visual device, right? And so that is something that is a good example. Another example is AI has been a pretty significant amount of investment, and that is something that we have done. Now, what that has translated into is fantastic applications, software applications coming out. ARDL is a great example, which ensures that the MR's scans, which typically take 20, 30, 40 minutes on a per scan basis, can happen in half the time, right? So a population which requires access now suddenly is able to get access with the MR because more people can go through the MR if need be. So those are examples. So those are examples of technologies which are coming out because of our focused attention and our ability to put money behind and effort behind those specific items. Now, I think from India's standpoint, there is a perspective as well, which is when you look at India as a healthcare business and as an economy, GE Healthcare is able to allocate resources, investments, time to India and India-like markets, which have large populations, large unmet needs. And so as a result, we have seen a little bit of supercharging, if you may, of both investments on new product development as well as investments in distribution, which allows us to be able to reach the far-flung areas, to reach the customers in the far-flung areas, to make sure that our products are suitable for the needs in India, that we are able to do some partnerships which allow us to be able to help those customers. And there are various examples. AliveCore is an example which allows you to be able to remotely detect ECG as an example. So there are various examples that have come out. So in all three aspects, and that is, I think, the significance from India standpoint. So more investments, more distribution, more products, and more willingness to go into meeting the needs of Indian market, if you may. So I think that's the way I see it. So pretty significant day. We call it our day of separation or day of independence. But I would say that it is much more a day when essentially healthcare market in India as well as globally got a new large size baby, if you may.
So India as a market, can you give us a sense of over the last, say, 5 years, how it's changed for you?
I think India is a dynamic market. Every day you wake up, there is so much to do and there is so much opportunity which is there. I think over the last 5 years, healthcare market has substantively changed in India. And I think I would say COVID is a great disruptor for the market as a whole. And I will give you maybe one anecdotal example, and that should probably elaborate the point. So, at home we have somebody who helps us at home, house help, right? And recently she had a circumstance where in her family, one of her brother was showing symptoms which are close to stroke-like symptoms, right? And so, as would be the norm, I anticipated that you need to go to the hospital and whatever help is required, etc. Because she had called my wife to ask, right? And in past, either because of financial wherewithal or because of various other factors, she would have delayed seeking care. And if she would have sought care, then it would have been typically her preference would have been based upon a little bit upon economic considerations. And so maybe a hospital which provides free service or hospital which is able to provide reduced expenditure based service. But this time what I noticed was she wanted to seek care immediately, go to the hospital immediately. And second, she was willing to go to a hospital which is a private hospital which did not necessarily provide a subsidized care. Okay. And so that is a natural change that I have seen, which is seeking care behavior has changed. People want care closer to their homes. And because of maybe a little bit of insurance penetration or maybe because of other factors, they are willing to not seek care exclusively based upon cost, but also based upon cost and quality. And I think that's the trade-off. And when you see that behavior change amongst people, the only rational basis is that COVID is the reason why that has actually happened. Now, eventually she went to a local private hospital, got the care necessary, etc., and decent outcomes were received. Now, what that has meant is we have seen government expenditure in healthcare increasing, because if people want it, people want higher quality, people want more care. And we are seeing substantial increase in the government spend in healthcare. More hospitals being built, more hospitals that are being upgraded, etc., on the public side. Secondly, we are also seeing pretty substantial increase in private hospitals wanting to expand or wanting to build more facilities, and private equity or other risk capital coming into the play. I think, if I remember correctly, we used to be about 1.5 to 1.6% of GDP spend on healthcare in India, and that has grown to about 2.1, 2.2%. And this is aggregate both public and private combined together, right? So clearly, it's a dynamic market. where the expenditure is growing and the health-seeking behavior is changing amongst the patient or general population. And I think the insurance penetration and the COVID is probably the contributory causes. And so I think that's how we see it in terms of the market for India.
So what are the implications of these changes for you as a provider, one of the world's largest providers of imaging and diagnostics medical technologies? And I know that there's a combination of hardware, software, and your Edison platform. Maybe down the line we can talk about that as well.
True. So I think first, whenever a market deepens, right, it creates opportunities for players like us because there is an aggregate demand expansion that is happening, which is more people want care, more hospitals are going to get built, etc. But at the same time, India is a very large population, 1.4 billion. So traditional models of just providing by building more and more hospitals, more and more facilities is not the fastest way to be able to deliver care to such a large population. And so we have two imperatives that are coming based upon that. One is obviously good market. We want to invest in products which can work for this kind of market. We want to distribute them. We want to make sure that they reach. But the second one is we have to innovate in the way we go to the market, in the way that we provide the technology, the nature of the technology that we provide. More digital, right? More working through remote means, right? More working in the outlying areas and not necessarily only metros. So I think those are the three big implications. And I think we have very good examples, whether it is a tele-ICU, right? Because patients require ICU care even outside of the major cities, but how are they going to get access to that? They want it. They cannot go to the main city. So local hospitals that are able to provide them the ICU care, but expertise being provided by hospitals who are located in the main cities. So we have some tele-ICU partnerships that we have with Medanta, for example, to be able to do that, right? Other examples like products which are sort of essentially easier to manage, maintain, and which can do high throughputs. I think we have recently launched a CT called Aspire CT, which has 3D printed components inside. So what happens is you reduce the number of components which are there. You are able to print complex components of 3D printing, and this is all done in Bangalore, right? Which reduces the maintenance requirement of the CT. So they can be placed in small towns where, one of the concerns that customers have is, okay, I want to do high number of CT scans, but how will I take care of the maintenance of the equipment? How will I ensure that? And so the 3D, so moving parts gets reduced. And so that is one example. And the third one is, I would say digital software solutions, which are AI based, which allow essentially some of the more mundane tasks to be done a little bit by the software system so that the clinicians can focus more of their attention on the less mundane tasks. There are some partnerships that we have as well. So I think there is one of the problems that is there is you have lots of patients who go through CT scans and you want to distinguish the ones who are require quick attention for stroke, etc. And so the scans get prioritized a little bit based upon the condition. It quickly identifies the one where within 60 minutes you require intervention. And so those are some of the AI software algorithms that have gotten developed so that we are able to meet this growing need, this need in the outskirts, and the ability to be able to provide expert help closer to your home. So I think that's how I would say the implications have been for all of us.
I mean, from a growth in the future point of view, can you give us a sense of how you all view India? So there's this sense that much of the growth is likely to come from the so-called global south. And
so, number one, India is first of all, India's economy is the fastest growing economy, major economy. So that is a fact. The penetration of healthcare is growing faster. So 1.6% of GDP to 2.2%, right? So which means that it is becoming a larger portion of the growing GDP. So naturally, India is one of our fastest growing market. If I had to put a number, it is one of the top 3 fastest growing market, right? Across the world, right? And so that is something that we see continuing for a sizable period of time. And there are very good drivers for it, right? Size of the market, size of the population, improving economic circumstances, penetrating health insurance penetration improving, etc. So I think all of those are good drivers. For us, India is a important market, and now I'm speaking more as a GE Healthcare, not as Wipro entity. From a GE Healthcare standpoint, it is a growing market which has its own unique needs. We have a local partner in the form of Wipro GE, and we think that in order to look at this multi-decadal opportunity in India, we have to make sure that we meet the requirements of the Indian market, sort of in the fashion that the India's market evolves, which means we will have to make investments in new products, in manufacturing, as well as in distribution and sales. And I think that's how we view it. And there is no other market which is as important, if you may, as the Indian market from our perspective, and no other market which provides the diversity of customer segments, diversity of needs, diversity of patients, diversity of clinical capabilities as India. And so it also acts as a test bed for us in various ways to be able to test out our products, our business models, etc., which can then go into India-like markets elsewhere, whether it is Nigeria, whether it is Indonesia, etc., which will have their own needs, but nevertheless we will have a test bed available here. And that's how we view India market. So great opportunity, but also a great place for us to be able to test out our hypothesis as we look at Global South as a whole.
Tell us a bit more about the products and from the following perspective. I mean, I know that GE Healthcare is a combination of hardware devices, and more recently you all have been projecting the idea of intelligent devices. And I think at a recent conference, a radiology conference, which was important, RSNA, you released some 40-odd products and features and so on. And then there is, of course, software products, and there is this data analytics platform that you call Edison platform. Can you give us a sense of how the future might bring us a kind of an increasingly integrated play of all of these things?
Wonderful. So I think let's start with the basic hypothesis that we have. The basic hypothesis that we have is that over a period of time, in all markets, not just in India, but in all markets, we clearly anticipate that the need will be not generalized care, but precision care. And what I mean by precision care is essentially that my ability to diagnose, treat, and manage every individual patient is going to be slightly different based upon a mix of the patient's genetic, environmental, and other factors that drive the way both the disease evolves in that patient, but also the way that patient reacts to treatment. And so that's our basic hypothesis, that some amount of personalization of care is required. Right. Now, personalization of care with the 8 billion population is not easy without technology adoption. And clearly, when I mean technology adoption, I mean the amount of software and analytics that needs to be involved, and the amount of AI that needs to be involved, because we will never have enough people to be able to create personalized care on an individual basis. That is not scalable. Right? And so with that as the basic thesis, what we have seen is increasingly we need products. They are hardware based because that is how we are collecting information, whether it is diagnostic information or therapy information or patient information. But the large portion of the product's value comes from the software applications and the algorithms that will reside either on the equipment or separated from the equipment on some kind of a platform, and we call it the Edison platform. That is what we have. Now, when we go to RSNA or when we go to other places, what we see is there are many companies which are developing software algorithms which can help in this personalization of care. Some of them are our partners, some of them obviously are working independently. So we also see that providers increasingly will want essentially a platform which curates and ensures that all these algorithms are meeting certain standards, are developed using the best quality data, are validated, etc. And there is a regulatory framework which regulators are coming up with for those. But we believe that Edison platform can act as a place which aggregates some of these algorithms, some of it from third parties, and makes them available for providers so that they can pick and choose from, or in some cases even the system itself will be able to pick and choose the algorithms that get applied to the patients, but with the singular aim of ensuring that we are able to give precision care to the patients, right? And Edison platform is essentially our endeavor to make sure that providers, large hospitals, etc., are able to have this platform where they are able to integrate different algorithms using data that is collected from hardware devices that we might have sold, that third parties might have sold, and it's a platform which allows us to be able to allows the providers to be able to pick and choose the algorithms that they use in order to personalize the care that is given. We have made pretty significant investments on the AI side, and I think you mentioned this at RSNA, FDA approved, so US FDA approved. We are the largest ones with AI algorithms out in the marketplace, right? And every RSNA we launch new products, both software-based, AI-based, or hardware products, and we did the same thing this RSNA as well. And that is the way we see the future. That is what will happen. So personalized care, number one. Number two, providers will need somebody to be able to aggregate and provide a platform which allows them to be able to seamlessly use algorithms that have been devised by us or others. And then companies like us continuously innovating and bringing out more and more AI-based algorithms that helps essentially personalize the care for the patient population. I think that's how we see it.
Briefly, how do enterprise customers, large hospital chains, how do they tap the Edison platform? Does it work like a SaaS subscription? Or?
So from an Edison platform perspective, the platform by itself is something that will be available for sale for customers. Today we don't sell it in India, but there are other places where we have customers that can actually buy the Edison platform, both in the form of as a capital equipment or as a subscription, etc. And I think I would say that the business model will evolve as we go through various customers to meet the needs of the customer. Some customers will want it as a capital purchase, some will want it as a subscription. And I think our endeavor will be to ensure that customers are able to get access to it in whatever form that suits them and is beneficial for us, and that we are able to meet the commitment. So I don't see any restrictions in terms of the business model by itself.
You made a brief mention of AI earlier on. Can you talk about which are the sort of more fundamental tech areas in which you're investing heavily from the perspective of GE Healthcare?
So I would say from an artificial intelligence standpoint, we always start with what is the three big problems that are there in the healthcare industry, and our algorithm development is directed towards that. And so I would say that the three big themes that we see is, number one, we need consistency of diagnosis and therapy that needs to happen as per guidelines, if you may, right? And that standardization of care is something which is one area. Second one is, we know that the throughput of patients is increasing exponentially, and providers are showing signs of fatigue given the amount of patients that they have to see. So throughput enhancement is something that is required. And the third one is, oftentimes skill where it is needed is not available. So I think those are the three broad areas. And I would say our AI algorithm development or software development, which is based upon large quantities of data and application of machine learning or AI-based algorithm, is in order to optimize one of these three. An example of that would be, so for throughput, I think I mentioned about ARDL. It's a software that sits on MR, which cuts down the time it takes to do a high quality image by 50%, right? So which means that a hospital can do, or a diagnostic center can do, twice the number of patients with the same install base, right? Second one that we typically focus on is, as I said, we have care which may be delivered at one site, but the expertise may not be available at that site. And so we have AI algorithms which allow remote management of the patient. I think Mural is one example that we have. And so there are AI algorithms within that product which look at various data parameters of an ICU patient to be able to identify who is worsening Because after worsening, if you find and if you want to intervene, there is very little you can do. But if you are able to predict which is a patient which is likely to worsen, or their care is going, their health status is going to worsen, then you have an opportunity to be able to intervene. And so I think those are two examples, if you may. One is essentially changing the workflow. Second one is taking care of the fact that skills may not be present at the place where you want them to be able to change the trajectory of the patient. So I think that would be the examples that I would give. But Mural and ARDL would be the two examples.
Just harking back to the point you made earlier about people seeking better healthcare, even if it means that they have to go to a private provider and maybe pay more, and we are still largely an out-of-pocket payment kind of market. For GE Healthcare, what are some of the innovation challenges that this kind of a scenario presents?
Sure. I would just modify that a little bit. It's not that they are willing to pay more than the value that they deliver. They're willing to pay fair price for the service that they get. And the second one is, I think, little bit of increasing penetration of insurance has happened. And so as a result, some of them do have some support or some mechanism to subsidize their care. I think from GE Healthcare standpoint, you have a large volume of patients which is essentially cannot afford or will not be able to afford care at the price points which may be available, right? And so we have seen innovation in the form of providers coming in at that segment, okay, both private and public. So for example, what we have started noticing is that in government facilities, there is a lot of PPP, which means private providers who sit within the government facility and provide care for the patient population, which is seeking care there. But they are able to deliver better quality, or in some cases better efficiency, right? Because they are able to do more patients, etc. So those kinds of innovations have happened in the providers, and we have been focused on making sure that we are able to enable those PPP type of providers, right? Now, when we have to enable, they have a expectation of high throughput, high quality, good service support, etc., so that they are able to meet the needs of such a broad range of population. And so the innovation challenge or the innovation requirement that has come based upon that is for us to devise products which are hardy, which can work with high throughput, which can work with, in certain cases, some infrastructural deficiencies which may be present, whether it is continuous power or lower grade power, etc. And so our innovation challenge is, how do I make sure that I'm able to build products which can benefit for that type of customer, so that I'm able to ensure that that portion of population is able to get access to good quality care. And I think, again, I hark back to the one example. I think I use Aspire as an example, but it is a product which meets that requirement. It was designed here, it's manufactured here, and it is with the very specific intention of making sure that high throughput sort of population can go through with it. But at the same time, it will break down less. It will have a more sturdy design which can handle the vagaries of the infrastructure that is available. And I use the 3D printing as just an example, because we have to innovate the way the CT is put together, so that it has less moving part, because moving parts obviously are prone to more failure. That it is also has tube capacity which is a little bit better, so that they are able to do many more scans before a tube needs to be X-ray tube needs to be replaced, etc., etc. So those are some of the innovations that we have to do, and it may be as basic as how it is packaged so that it can be transported to a remote location, which is where this is going to be present. So that's the challenge that we face, and we always look forward to those type of challenges, because there is a satisfaction in being able to bring out such a product which enables it. And what we have seen is 2/3 of the PPP installations across India seem to have a GE Healthcare product, and this is across the modalities. I've just used CT as an example, but whether it is an oncology-based PPP, radiology-based PPP, they seem to choose us. We have a PET CT product which is manufactured here, which was designed here as well, which has been something that has been adopted by the same group of customers. And so the satisfaction is in solving their problem, the providers and the customers who are providing that, and that in return is providing access to care to a portion of population which in other sense would have had difficulty getting it. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay, so staying on this theme of designed in India or made locally products, and I know that you're pushing to expand on that localization effort. What sort of is the next logical phase of evolution? In the software world, people started out with back office support, and now there are very sophisticated, the so-called global capability centers expanding. In the world of GE Healthcare, and you have a massive tech center right here where we are doing this conversation, what's the next logical step in this journey of marrying global R&D and capabilities and knowledge with local experience?
So I would say, let me use a little bit of a historical perspective. So I think the three big changes that happened over the last 60, 70 years, and they are not just medtech focused, but they are in general industry focused, is I think if you remember 70s and 80s, Japan took a pretty significant leap forward in terms of technology development and bringing out products which were not just appreciated in Japan, but were appreciated over the world. And they were based upon, I would say, one of the two themes, which is miniaturization and high quality. Right? I think if you go back to maybe the first 10 years of 2000, I think China did something similar, but it focused its attention more on being the lowest cost manufacturer. And I think that is essentially what they're focused on. I think India has the perfect opportunity to be able to provide innovative products which have perfectly married software and hardware because of our software skills, our AI skills, and our capabilities that we have, with the optimal cost of manufacturing of hardware, and having that as the future so that we are able to deliver precision care. That's the opportunity that I see, and that's the opportunity that GE Healthcare sees. The next logical step for us is the only way that we can solve the problems of healthcare system, whether it is in India or globally. Okay. The India problem may be I need to expand access to a much larger population at a much lower cost and being able to deliver it places where patients exist. The problem in Western countries may be that I have not enough skilled resources that are able to deliver healthcare, and some amount of automation is required. And there might be others where, like in UK or some other places where there is long waiting times for access to care just purely because of lack of adequate capacity. So the solution to all of these, to a certain extent, is being able to ensure that we have innovative hardware which is hardy, which is capable, but it is married with software which has the AI algorithms which ensures that the mundane tasks get done, the quality is high, and at the same time the throughput can be expanded. And I see that there is no other place which is more perfect than India and then the Wipro facility that we are here, which is able to do both of these, which is we have the software and the AI capability, we have the capability of delivering, designing products, and we have the capability to manufacture here. And so I think this is a perfect place where we will be able to marry and to be able to take us and propel us to that leadership position. But I think I wanted to give you that historical perspective to be able to say how this might fit. And this is not just for India and for Wipro, but I think it is broadly for the industry as a whole, that's the opportunity that I see.
I was going to say that people are pushing towards what they're calling outcomes rather than getting them payments for fees for service or whatever, right? And so and I think that model and versions of it is now beginning to proliferate. Probably not yet in a market like India, but I'm just so you can think a lot about this.
Yeah, so I would say that paying for outcomes or value-based care has been a concept which has been there for almost 20 years, and I would say that there have been, as a payer, as an insurance payer, what you want to make sure that you're not paying for just a whole bunch of service, but you're paying for the best care that the patient can get. And that push has been there for quite a bit of time. The 2 or 3 things which have prevented it from happening one is care happens in primary setting, in secondary setting, in tertiary setting, in all different settings, and including home. So no single insurance company or anybody has a end-to-end view to the data of a patient, and that prevents the ability to be able to do value-based care, or prevented in the past, right? Second one, I think, is there was a mixture of analog, let's say, equipment or analog intervention and digital intervention. And so there were gaps in the data that is available to be able to track and monitor patients on an ongoing basis. And I think, hence, while that idea has been there, its implementation has been hard. But with increasing digitization throughout the entire chain of care provision, with more digital, whether it is equipment, whether it is software, whether it is connectivity between patient and the provider, which happens digitally, I see that the opportunity is the best now to be able to have that continuum of data on a patient, to be able to monitor, to be able to ensure that providers are able to feel that they have more control over the entire life cycle of the patient, and as a result will be more willing to be able to take participate in this value-based care. And so I think the future is bright towards that, and I anticipate that more and more of this will happen. Now, in developed countries, it is happening more from a standpoint of efficiency, right? If a payer is paying, they want to make sure that they are getting efficient outcomes out of it for the patients. I think for countries like India, we have the opportunity to leapfrog. And the reason why we have opportunity for leapfrog is because unless I do that, I cannot change the population health of 1.4 billion population. And so I think that's the opportunity I see for India, with the way the government is going behind creating the technology stack and the digital integrated platform. I think that is the opportunity that India has. And if we don't do that in India, I think the healthcare costs can spiral and skyrocket if it is purely based upon fee for service in India. And so I see us both from a need standpoint, both from an efficiency standpoint, and also from the standpoint of making sure that we are able to deliver care to such a large population. That's the only pathway to go. And I would say I see good things happening in the future.
So can you delve into this a little bit more? When you say we have an opportunity to leapfrog, can we actually go in the next 10 years from where there are sort of horror stories reported about surgeons, having to make up quotas of the number of surgeries that they do and so on. So not necessarily in the best interests of patient care. So can we get to a point in a decade from now where people can sort of trust the care that they're getting, get good outcomes, and like you said, pay for value?
Yeah, so I think any system can perfectly function as long as there are three elements which are there. So first is clarity of regulations. Second one is end-to-end mapping and monitoring of what the patient happens to the patient, or in this case, to the customer or to the patient. It doesn't matter. And the third element is standardization of care. So I think you need all three elements to happen, because it is very difficult without standardization of care to know whether the care being delivered to a particular patient is appropriate or inappropriate, and whether it will deliver the right outcomes or not deliver the right outcomes. In the next 10 years, what I see is the regulatory framework is definitely deepening and becoming specific. And so I think that's good progress. I see a pretty substantial amount of investments happening, whether on the private side or on the public side, in ensuring that you have a continuum of data availability for a patient for different reasons. But at the end of the day, it is creating a singular record. And I see that happening as well, both on the government side, because I think it's called ABHA framework, which is, I think, going to come out, which is based upon the way COVID vaccinations was managed to be able to create a continuum of view on each individual patient. So I think that is going to create the wherewithal that is required, which is based upon mobile phone, Aadhaar card, etc. So I think that will get created. I think the third element, which is standardization of care, that's the place where I see the maximum amount of progress that needs to be made. But that is also the place where we are seeing the most amount of innovation, which is standardization of care is automatically going to happen the moment you start having AI algorithms which get implemented and used, or whether Edison platform gets used or not. So what that does is, for AI algorithms to work, they need to be able to have a clear pathway that if conditions X, Y, Z, A, B, C are present, then this is the next action that needs to be taken. And so that drives a little bit of the standardization automatically. The more and more adoption of AI algorithms can happens. And so I think that is the reason I am very hopeful that those three elements, regulatory framework, the continuum of data, and the standardization of care being happening because of infiltration or use of more and more artificial intelligence and software, that I think that will ensure that we will move towards value-based care much more here in India as compared to elsewhere. And why I say leapfrogging for India is because, believe it or not, we are much further along in terms of the data. For example, the vaccination record. I mean, a billion people can go to their phone and get the vaccination record. Not many countries. I used to see something similar in Singapore, but it's a much smaller country. So that is something which is already there. The regulatory framework, we have the ability to be able to create a regulatory framework based upon the future rather than based upon legacy considerations which have existed in the developed countries. As an example, the way insurance evolved, let's say in the United States, drives the way the regulation gets evolved, because there are lots of entrenched players who don't want to lose their power, etc., which is not a problem that we have. We can actually create the regulation which helps the patient outcomes. And so I think from that standpoint, and the AI algorithm adoption is something that is happening rapidly and will continue to happen. So when I put all those three things together, I see no reason why we cannot leapfrog, and we have specific advantages which other developed countries don't have.
And from the point of view of building out the innovation ecosystem in the healthcare, and a lot of people are hoping and even anticipating that what we've been able to do in fintech with the public digital infrastructure, on top of which a lot of innovations happened in India, we may be able to do that in healthcare. Do you think a company like GE Healthcare can be some kind of an anchor around which a bunch of startups can innovate, and maybe you can help take their technologies to the market? What is your approach to this?
Yeah, so I think I would like to say in two separate fashions. So first, the basic premise that innovations will happen because of the the infrastructure getting built is true. So I think innovation requires 3-4 items, right? One is large population, so that you are able to try out a little bit of an entrepreneurial mindset. Third one is fairly clear regulations or regulatory framework, especially in areas like healthcare. And then essentially the fourth one is the support system that can exist both in the form of investor community as well as in the form of companies, strategic investors like us, who can provide know-how, because we have been in the market for quite some time. I think all those 4 elements exist, and GE Healthcare does have a pretty significant role to play. That's how we think about it. I think from a standpoint of, so opportunity exists from a standpoint of GE Healthcare. The way we have been focused on is, we realized very earlier on that we need a low cost or a efficient, I shouldn't use low cost, but I should say efficient distribution network to be able to reach a very large pool of customers in a very efficient fashion. And so we actually set up and invested into a company called GenWorks, which is our distribution engine exclusively for non-metro areas, right? And what we ensured is that that entity is able to not just distribute GE Healthcare's product, but also of products of other companies, including startups, right? So it's an efficient engine for ensuring that the products reach the customer, right? Because that is oftentimes one of the problems that companies who are innovative come up with, is they are very good at developing products, but then they have to cross the regulatory barriers, and then they have to ensure that they have adequate distribution to be able to do it, especially in the regulated environment. So we created that entity to be able to enable the regulatory side of the picture. The second side is on product development side, because we do have capability here in our technology center and long years of experience of developing products in a regulated environment. We have had partnerships with academic institutions, which is where typically these companies come from, whether it is IISc, whether it is IIT Madras, etc., so that we are able to enable the people who are coming up with bright ideas to be able to think about how that idea gets converted into a product, right? And I think we have some ongoing partnerships with startups which are present in the world. I think most of the partnerships that we have so far have been more to do with I think specific areas of products which we think are complementary to what we are selling and are able to distribute. So I think those are the two ways that I think about it in terms of the support that we are able to give. So a little bit of help on the product development side, and then of course a distribution entity which is efficiently able to distribute somebody's products that are there.
Is India still too nascent a market for you to be able to find promising technology companies to acquire? I mean, I know in the last 1 year you've already acquired 2 companies that we know of, and one gets the sense that GE Healthcare is looking to become a more comprehensive provider of med tech in general, beyond imaging and so on. So what's the scene in India, the promising acquisition targets, maybe even on the software side?
Yeah, so I think India is a very deep innovation market. There have been quite a few players who have even, quite a few engineers who have even gone from the tech center here, gone outside and set up companies, right? There are quite a few companies which are there. So to answer your question, it is definitely not a nascent market. It is a market which does have opportunities, does have companies, which are developing innovative products which are interesting, right? And so I think that is a reality. From a GE Healthcare standpoint, I would say we have a strategy and a playbook that we have, and we are always scanning the market to find opportunities where strategically there is a company or a product which can be complementary to us, which can accelerate our strategy, and we are always on the lookout. And India would be no different. We wouldn't be restricted only to India or only to any other country, but it would be part of the puzzle that we would look at all times, and I don't think we would go away from it. But I think it has to make strategic sense. It has to make accelerate our intentions of going forward, and that's the way I see it.
I definitely wanted to ask a couple of questions based on your own corporate career. Okay. Quite often kind of brings out interesting points on leadership and how businesses are changing in the world. I mean, in your previous roles, you've overseen marketing strategy for ASEAN, Australia, New Zealand, South Korea. The reason I mentioned that, I mean, for our audience is because of the following reason. Is this a trend you're seeing where in the past Indians would go from here to the US or other Western markets, and then they would rise to senior positions or become CEOs, etc. But now it looks like there's a growing number of senior executives like yourself, and you mentioned Jyoti earlier on was one of your bosses, where you're based in India, but you have increasingly global operations to oversee. Is this something that you see as a trend in different large multinational businesses?
Yeah. So I can give a speculative perspective. It's not something which anybody designs as a strategy, right? In general, if you think about it, right, all executives at the end of the day would be selected based upon where a company sees opportunity for growth and which markets are critical and which markets are likely to be the markets of the future. And I think it is not lost on anybody that India, with a large scale population, growing economy, growing middle class, is going to be that market. And so the skill or the capability gained in this market is going to be critical for the future, just as it was in the past, whether it was for China, whether it was for Japan, or whether it was for the United States. And so I think that's a fact, right? And so that creates a little bit of an opportunity for people who want to develop careers that want to have a global outlook or perspective, that they are able to spend some amount of time or some amount of oversight or some amount of work that they do, which are in the markets of the future. So I think that's number one. Number two, I think because of COVID, a lot of work people have started realizing can be done with local presence, but some amount of work can also be done with a presence outside of the market, right? Which means the remote work is something which is not considered as a exception, but it is considered as accepted norm of regular work. And so that has created the opportunities that you want to hire for companies, that you want to hire the best talent wherever it may be placed, because the ability to be able to function is not dependent upon which geography or where you are located. And so I think that has democratized the talent availability a little bit as well. So I think those are the two factors which I see is a reason why you are seeing this trend of maybe more people who have presence in markets other than the traditional United States or traditional markets where most of the executives used to come from, and you see a little bit more widespread global teams. That's my perspective. But I don't think it is an intentional design. I think it is just a natural evolution organically because of the COVID pandemic and because of the way the market development is happening.
And in your own case, you're not the typical engineer to CEO, but you're from a pharmacology to CEO position. What was the reason behind the choice of pharmacology?
Reason behind choice of pharmacology was just purely after. After my 12th standard, when you make the choice, I really liked chemistry and I really liked life science. I did not want to become a doctor because I don't think I could deal with the day-to-day patient interaction, etc. That is just my personality. And so I wanted to go down that path. That's the reason I went down that path. Now, obviously, when you are 16 and you're making these choices, 18 making these choices, you have no idea what you want to do as far as your career is concerned. So the career evolves a little bit more organically as you go through what you find interesting and then you keep on pursuing. But I was very clear that I wanted to be in the healthcare field. And I'm glad that after 20 years or so in the career, I'm happy that I have continued to remain in the healthcare industry. That is not something that I was looking to go out of. That's just the way it is.
Okay.
Unplanned.
All right. One last question. It's kind of standard question I like to ask anytime I meet someone senior in any industry. Today, the pace at which things are changing is very different from how it was 20 years ago. For young people who are just beginning their careers, whether in a tech-heavy industry or in any industry where tech will play an increasing role, how would you have them prepare?
Okay. So, pace of technology and pace of change that is happening is pertaining to sort of the technology side of the equation, right? But the only way to overcome that is A, to have solid foundations, and B, to keep on learning all the way through. So don't think that as soon as you finish your graduation, your learning is over. Your learning continues all the way through and you have to be open to it and you have to continuously invest in order to be able to do it. So that's one side of the equation. But the second side of the equation, which is the basic value systems, which means how you will behave, how you will work, how you will interact with people, that doesn't change irrespective of whether the technology is changing. And so having that solid foundation in integrity, transparency, humility, I think working on that continuously to make sure that whichever may be the technology platform that you're interfacing with colleagues, customers or friends, that your basic personality doesn't change just because the technology changed. I think those are the two ways that I think people can prepare. So number one, don't leave your value systems. They have to remain rock solid. Number two, continuous learning so that you are able to make sure that you keep pace with the changes in technology.
That's it for this conversation. You can find all our videos on ForbesIndia.com and on YouTube. I'm Hari Arakli. Thank you for watching.